me. And I say that because I went to Archbishop Carroll High School, and my 12th grade year of high school, I was coming into my own, learning who I was, what I liked, learning my passions, the things that drive me, and all of that kind of wonderful thing. And 12th grade year, I was in a creative writing class, and I was always writing poetry, but it was in my creative writing class where I began to get my own style of poetry. I learned the kind of writer that I was. And I was in a creative writing class, and it was taught by Mr. Joseph Ross, one of my favorite teachers from high school. And this particular time, he gave us an assignment, and that assignment was to write a poem in the voice of somebody else. And so I thought that how cool or interesting it would be rather to write a poem in the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. From the time he was struck with the bullet until the time he took his last breath. What would be the thoughts that would be running through his mind? And so in order to write that poem with accuracy, I had to do research. I had to do research about the events around the assassination, who was there, who wasn't there, the intricate details. And so that kind of led me to a rabbit hole into learning more about Dr. Martin Luther King. I learned more about him as a human being, as a person, his imperfections, and the things that made him who he was. I wanted to know more about him, not just the speaker and the orator, but I wanted to know him as the father, the husband, the dad, the preacher, the son, the nephew, and the grandchild of these descendants of wonderful Baptist preachers. And so it was during that assignment to where I began to get fascinated with Dr. King, the human. He became human to me, and so I was learning about the assassination. And so I wrote this poem called 306 Lorraine Motel, and that poem is in his voice. I wrote the poem, and then my class, they loved the poem, and then I had the opportunity of saying the poem that February in a Black History event that we had at my school. And when I read the poem in front of people, it was a crowd full of people. You had people that were in their 60s and 70s at the time, and the oohs and the ahs and the groanies and the and so they loved the poem. I ended up sending the poem to the National Civil Rights Museum, which is the Lorraine Motel that is turned into a museum. And surprisingly, they wrote back, I believe, like a week or two after I sent them the letter, saying that they loved the letter, they appreciated the letter, and they were going to keep it on file and contact me if they wanted to do anything with this poem. And so that started Dr. King's assassination. And Dr. King was the very reason why I went to undergrad for criminal justice, because it just didn't make sense. I wanted to find out who exactly killed him, who was involved. And so that kind of spearheaded me going into school for criminal justice, and why I'm working in the field that I work in now. And so, Dr. King, he's very much so an inspiration to me. Many people know only the I Have a Dream speech and the Mountaintop speech, but my love for Dr. King goes far beyond that. And so it was always a big deal to me that for the last 10, 11 years of my life, I wanted to be able to go to Memphis to see the Lorraine Motel, and I wanted to go to Montgomery, Alabama, to see Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and I also wanted to go to Atlanta to see Ebenezer, to visit, to see the birth home. And so, I always knew that those were pilgrimages that I wanted to make. And so, needless to say, this particular poem, along with many other poems that I wrote in high school, I put it in my first book that I published when I was 21 years of age, called From Pain to Poetic Justice, Reflections in Poetry. And that poem, 306 Lorraine Motel, is definitely one of my favorite pieces, one of my favorite poems. And so, it's monumental for me as I think back and look at it and reflect, but it's definitely one for the books. Yeah.
is, this is weird, man. I didn't want to get my hair raised, but it's like all these last 11 years I've been wanting to come here.
Excuse me. You want to take a picture closer to it? You want to take a picture closer to it with your mask off?
Backyard of the house. Taking it all in.
Oh, man. I'm pretty sure those is outhouses or something.
Probably.
These are probably little apartments. At a point. You know?
Yeah. So I'm assuming these were always here.
Yeah. They were probably like little apartments. There's a little thing over there that has.
Mm. He had a nice backyard back here. Y'all, this is so weird just being here. You know, I've dreamed the last 11 years coming here. Dr. King is the reason why I even went, his assassination was the reason why I went to undergrad in criminal justice. So being here is big, yo. It just feels so weird being here. Not in a bad way, but you know. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. I really don't. I would take my mask off for y'all to see, but people don't like wearing their mask in Georgia. No offense. It's still cold for real. But it looks like a lot of these houses are original houses. They just kept them here. And I don't know if people actually live in them, but I want to say over here, this is where they filmed part of Lovecraft Country. If you look at some of the scenes when they was doing the Tulsa, the scenes with Tulsa, I think they were living in some of these houses. This is weird, man. It is so weird. Like, I finally made it to Atlanta. It's weird. So we about to swing by the church. I think they closed at like 5, but I just wanted to get in if I could, just to get inside of it.
You want to go now then? So
Yeah, we're going now. I think it's right here.
Oh, it's in walking distance.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was a great situation then.
Yeah.
Walk to church every morning.
Yeah. But they ended up, they didn't sell it, the birth home. What they did was, after a while, they ended up renting it to other people. And so they moved, I think, in like, if I'm not mistaken, like the 40s, I think, if history serves me right. They still owned it, Black Enterprise. But they
rented it out.
They rented it out to several people. Yeah. So the King Center owns it now. But, you know. And then he's buried over here, actually. Yeah. If I could describe to y'all the goosebumps I feel while being here, it's crazy. Anybody that knows me knows I'm an MLK fanatic, so being here is just weird. You can show them this. We're going to the actual burial grounds with Dr. King in. Where to be buried. I've always wondered how they get out here when they come later reefs and everything. Watch your step. I've always wondered how they get out here to the pool. It looks different in pictures though than it does in person, actually being out here in person. And to actually see it is just crazy. Show them that right there. That's good. So it's interesting how they chose a location from the birth home to the middle, if I'm not mistaken, in between this and the church. How you doing? Excuse me, is Ebony right there? Yes, sir. Right there. That's you right there.
Give me a headache.
Thank you. This is so crazy coming here. Sometimes it's just not even about saying much of anything. Sometimes you can't say anything. I mean, I know a lot of people that actually know me know that I love MLK. And so I know y'all expecting me to say a lot of stuff and to have a lot of commentary. But I think for me, it's just soaking in the moment and just being in the moment. It's like even driving in Atlanta, you know, the goosebumps and the feeling. Like I was telling y'all earlier, Dr. King is the reason why I went to undergrad for criminal justice, because I just wanted to find out who killed them, the truth behind it. And so doing all of my research, all the poetry I've written about him and all this kind of stuff, you know, finally having a place to come to that I've been researching and learning about is big. It's just big. And to be able to see this, as preachers and believers, we know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. But I'm about arm distance from this actual body. It's just crazy. Shout out to my wife who's being an awesome camera woman. Definitely coming back here in a couple weeks. I need to give more. Just a dedicated day just to come here. And I think over here is the actual church, Ebenezer. Well, this is the new Ebenezer church right here that they built some years ago. Right across the street, actually. Who knew they actually bring in my son to Jacksonville, Florida to see his dad will turn into this? Who knew? There it is. Ebenezer Baptist Church. Oh no, we just record. It's okay.
I like your race. Thank you. I love your dog. Thank you.
Do me a favor, catch me a picture right there. Thank you. I'm sure you can appreciate these old houses you're sitting here.
On the street where we stay.
My next house is definitely gonna be over.
It's just, man, looking at it.
Adoration for older homes. You know,
Well,
I do love it. Like that one house in the arts district in Baltimore that we looked at.
yeah.
I would have loved to purchase that house. Not to keep for myself, but to keep and put somebody else in it. They just want too much goddamn money for it. They wanted like
Back of that firehouse.
79,000. I'm like, dude, I'll take it for like 30. It needs too much. It's a very involved project.
How cool was it just to walk from your house to church and church to your house?
It doesn't take that rocket science to figure out which way or which lineage is right. Right? I see you pick up this 5 times a day. You might be Muslim, but you're still like to play. There were signs that said.
So, I'm here on Sunset Avenue, Northwest. Behind me is Dr. King's last home that he lived at, that he lived when he was assassinated. What can I say? This house here is where Coretta raised her kids, her children. Let's see, those steps there, that's where Jacqueline Kennedy walked up those steps the day of the funeral to greet Coretta Scott King. It's just crazy being here though. They had a big driveway. Yeah. So, from what I understand, the National Park Service has bought this home like a year ago, and they're going to be turning this into a museum, I guess a part of the King Historical Park. And so, this is Dr. King walked these steps, parked his car in that driveway, Walked the steps, lived here. Yep. So yes, they're going to definitely, supposedly, the Park Service bought it, and they're going to be doing some things, I guess, to make it into part of the historic site. So I can't wait to see that.
Yeah. As I step foot onto this balcony, I greet everyone standing beside and below me. Last night I gave a speech that was a part of my cleansing, but little did I know, within the next few minutes, I would enter another dimension. It's kind of cold out, Doc. You should go back in and grab an overcoat. I tilt my head up to feel a breeze unlike no other. It felt like the breath of death coming to claim my temple. Before I could step back into my King Abernathy suite, a bullet pierces my jaw, travels down through my spinal cord, knocking me off my feet. I lay tranquilized on the ground as my blood becomes acquainted with the rusty concrete on the balcony. I look over to my right and see my good friend Reverend Ralph Abernathy. He puts a towel over my face and to stop the blood from flowing. Martin, it's Ralph. Everything is going to be okay. But I realized April 4th, 1968 would be my transition day. As I lay on my rugged soiled deathbed that is contaminated with the footsteps of rats and roaches, I see a quick slideshow of the life I live. From the precious moments with Yoki, Bernice, Dexter, and Marty, to the sentimental moments with Coretta, my living is not in vain. From Montgomery to Memphis, from the drum major to I Have a Dream, from the Ku Klux Klan to the SCLC, my living is not in vain. From John F. Kennedy to Medgar Evers, no greater love than one who will lay down his life for a friend. No, my living is not in vain. I soak every last moment of life with pride, even though I can't respond when they call my name. My voice taken by the impact of hatred, jealousy, and envy, all in one vicious bullet. I strain and mumble the shattered words of my favorite melody. Precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on, let me stand. I am tired, I am weak, I am worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. I end this phase of life, slipped away into the bosom of Jesus Christ. As my devoured physical shell remains, others hope it will be saved from an already declared unconscious sleep. My blood leaves a smeared writing on the concrete that says, Martin Luther King Jr. was here, 1929 through 1968. Rest in peace.
Hey, what's happening? This is Deontay Carroll, host of Turn Up the Volume podcast. And listen, I want to let y'all know something. You can follow us on many different platforms. You can follow me on Facebook at Deontay J. Carroll Sr. You can also follow me on Twitter at Deontay J. Carroll, no apostrophe. Also, I'm on Instagram at Deontay Carroll, all one word, no apostrophe. And lastly, you want to follow me on YouTube at Deontay Carroll, because I post all of my episodes and post all of my shows from the podcast on my YouTube page. So if you want to continue to stay connected, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on all of my social media platforms. And remember, until next time, keep that volume turned up. Peace. Be blessed.